Size also has a huge impact on how you feel in your home.
Absolutely.
I've walked a number of homes this year that had spaces that felt like grand ballrooms, and they look fantastic. But I can imagine being there trying to cook dinner and someone's trying to watch TV and the ceiling is 30 feet high in this room that is 70 feet long. The sound is echoing everywhere.
Sure.
And I consider that bad design.
Hey, everybody, welcome back to the show. You're on 73 Degrees Podcast. The gist of the 73 Degrees is that everybody has a relationship with their thermostat and everyone's got their perfect number. Mine happens to be 73, so that's where you're joining us. But one thing that I love to do is chat with people in the industry. I do interior design, and I like to have people come on and talk about what are some of the things that they do to help their clients have their own perfect environment. So I'm going to set 73 aside, and I'm going to make the perfect environment for my client. Today, joining us is Kory Cox from Oxford Architects, and we're so excited to hear from him. He's different from a lot of the other architects that I've met with, and he's got some special things that he does for his clients to create the perfect environment for them. So welcome to the show, Kory. Thank you for coming.
Oh, my pleasure. Thanks for having me on.
Yeah, we're so glad to have you. So let's start a little bit. First of all, what's your favorite number?
My favorite number, I had 71, I think.
71, all
Yeah,
right.
I get down to like 69 and my hands are cold and I can't have a hard time typing on the keyboard, but
I love it.
71 feels good.
I love it. You're a little more cold-blooded than me, so I love it. Cool. All right, well, tell us, first of all, a little bit about your firm and some of the special things that you do to create the perfect environment for your clients.
Yeah. So my firm is fairly new. I founded it about a year and a half ago, but I do have a 20-year history in architecture. Throughout that time, I worked on a lot of different projects. I have done a number of custom homes, but I think it's important to know that I worked on some institutional level projects. I spent 7 years with HDR. It's a 12,000-man firm, and we did airports, train stations, and hospitals. So when I started my own firm, I'm able to bring kind of that large firm dependability, level of excellence, and QA/QC process to everything that I do.
So obviously there's some advantages to a large firm versus a small firm. Talk to us about what some of those advantages are for working with a small firm like yours, because somebody can go to a large firm and get all of those things, but what are some of the benefits of working with a firm of your size?
Yeah. So with a small firm, there are a number of things that you might get that with a large firm you're not going to get. Okay. And so I actually want to talk about that from the top down. So with that large firm, client's going to go to them and they think about some of the advantages, like, okay, this firm has a lot of people, so I'm going to get this deep bench of expertise. They know what they're doing. They've done a lot of projects, and those things are often true. And then with a small firm, you might worry, it's a single person. How good of a job could they possibly do?
Sure.
Do they have the level of expertise that we need for our project to be successful? I like to talk to my clients about, my past experience, which I already touched on briefly, to show them that I am bringing this large firm mentality to the small firm experience. And I think one of the issues that people run into when they go into those larger firms is their project might not be as important internally as it is to them, right?
Yeah.
So if you imagine the politics of the principal in charge, that person might be responsible for the salaries and the livelihood of 3 dozen people underneath them. They have to bring in X number of projects every year. Your project is only one of those projects.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you meet with that principal, you develop a rapport with them. Maybe they've done some magic tricks for you, and you really like them. But the first thing they're going to do is they're going to turn around and pass you off to a project manager who has a team underneath them. Hopefully you develop good rapport with them, but you may not.
Sure.
Right. So that right there is a risk point. And then which team did you get?
Yeah.
Is it their A team? Did you get their B team? Or is it their G team?
Sure.
Depending on how many projects they have in the queue and which of those projects are more important than others, you just don't know which team you're getting.
Okay.
Right. So if I have a client walk into my office and we develop rapport and they decide they like me, they get to work with me.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's beautiful. And I get that a lot. I'll have people saying, okay, I love everything you have to say. So how much time are we going to spend together, right? I think you build a friendship, you build a relationship with them right off the bat. And so I think that's great. I think from the moment that they've met you and they've interacted with you, by the time they hire you, they already know that they've got some good rapport with you and that they're feeling good and comfortable with your energy and your ideas and expectations, right? Yeah. Talk to us a little bit about what that experience is like as far as painting the picture and designing out their perfect home, their literal perfect environment where they're going to come to reside. What does that look like and how do you get it perfect for them?
Good architecture really boils down to process. And I do things a little bit differently. I have a step one that no other architect takes. This is the pre-design diagnosis, right? So before we're doing any sketching, we're going to sit down, I'm going to talk with you. And in that conversation, I'm trying to tease out what are the central concerns that a client might have before they get started.
Yeah.
Right. And that's going to lead me into a period of research.
Okay.
Right. And so during that period of research, I'm answering whatever that essential question is. I'm also doing zoning research, a little bit of site analysis. And then that's going to give us an opportunity to talk about what are all of the opportunities that this site is going to present to you architecturally.
Okay. So do you find yourself, this is a little bit of a diversion from where we are thinking of going, but do you find yourself designing the home more for the site or the site for the home? What's the highest and most important factor in getting the client the right home? What is determining a lot of those things?
Each home is very much specifically designed for the site. If that is not a concern, someone's not hiring an architect.
Sure.
Right. That's one of the essential things that we do.
Okay. So kind of letting the house mold and morph into what it wants to be as far as its surroundings go.
Yeah, it's highly responsive to its environment. The streetscape around it, the homes that surround it, the character of the overall neighborhood. You might have view opportunities you want to take advantage of.
Sure.
I love working on sloped sites, right? And the opportunities that can afford us and playing with form and things. So there is a certain amount of, poetry perhaps or ripple between the topography and the final form of the home.
I love that. I think as interior design firm, for us, a lot of times we are at the mercy of what the home is already designed as. So we're not always thinking necessarily in the context of like, this house is trying to be colonial when it wanted to be this other style over here. You've already kind of addressed a lot of those things, which I think is beautiful for us. It's a little bit, right? I think our details are more specific and they're more aesthetic to the finite level, but a lot of like that grand energy is already determined by you and the client. So that's kind of a beautiful thing that happens in your category before it gets to our category.
Yeah.
So I love that. Talk to me about some of the less tangible things that are going on when you're helping design a house. Obviously, the aesthetic is super important. The layout, the function, the flow of the home, those are all really important.
Yeah.
Those are all things that clients are coming to expect from an architect, but some of those other things that we've discussed before.
This is one of those sort of difficult things to understand about architects and architecture. The style of the home is not that important. It is important to the final look and feel of the home. But when an architect sits down and is asked to design in any particular style, any decent architect can almost immediately break down a style into its design language, right? This is the materiality, this is the massing, here are the roof structures, is there a certain window pattern that's expected? Sometimes there are elements of what the floor plan might do in a historical sense. They're going to telegraph through, you mentioned a colonial, very classic to have, fireplace on either end, very boxy structure, gable roof. The floor plan is you have 4 rooms and a hallway in between. That's a very classic structure for a colonial home. But it's also interesting to think about how the way we design modern homes, even if the exterior of the home is in a colonial style like that, the floor plan might not match it.
Yeah, sure.
Right? It's very common now to design open floor plans.
Yep.
And in the historical sense, if you're looking at something built in the 16th or 17th century, they didn't have interior bathrooms.
Yeah, right. Yeah, fair
and
point.
Certain places did not have interior kitchens. The kitchen might have been housed in a smaller building out back because of the fire risk and the extra heat that might have been created, particularly in the South. They would have wanted to separate the heat from the kitchen from the rest of the home. So any historical style that we might build in today is to accomplish a feeling, not a historical setting.
Yeah, that's fascinating. And I love how you're kind of talking about how architecture and how a home looks aren't necessarily the same thing. I kind of laugh because when I went to college, I originally thought I wanted to be an architect and I knew nothing about interior design. I didn't know it existed. I mean, I'd heard of it, right?
Yeah.
And as I dug in, I thought, oh, actually everything I thought I would have been doing as an architect is actually the interior design portion.
Yep.
So share a little bit about like where yours ends and ours begins, right? Obviously furniture and decor, that's going to be in the interior design category, but some of those other things, there's also a moment where the two intersect.
This is a conversation we have to have kind of on every home because there are certain elements of a home that I need to design even in an internal sense, right? And a fireplace is a really good example of that
Sure.
because it has electrical and mechanical components. We have to be very worried about smoke control. It's going to intersect with the roof above, and waterproofing at that penetration is very important. And so oftentimes that will fall under me,
Yeah.
right? And then you're going to be designing everything around it.
Sure.
But maybe you might be working on the face of the fireplace and what it looks like, or we would at least be working together to come up with that. But everything internally and mechanically,
Yeah.
I'll be doing behind the scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. Behind the scenes. And so speaking of behind the scenes, right? When you're in any sort of living space, there's something else that you experience other than the look and the feel, other than the massing, other than the shape of the home. We've talked about air quality. We've talked about sound quality. We've talked about lighting. So of those three, let's kind of go in order. Like, what's your top priority on those three? And then let's touch on a little bit if we've got a minute for the others.
Absolutely. The final priority of the design is to accomplish a comfortable interior environment, right? In each room, you might be shooting for a different emotion that you're trying to elicit, but acoustics, light, and thermal comfort are all important elements of those. So talking about acoustics then, this is an element that's always been really important to me.
Yeah.
My brain interprets sound a little bit differently than other people. I experienced something called the cocktail party problem.
Okay.
I don't know if you've ever heard of this. Does that sound familiar to you at all?
I mean, but I can kind of like gather where you might be headed.
Yeah.
And you're probably not alone in that. I bet it happens a lot.
Yeah. So if I walk into a room and it's filled with people and there's no acoustical treatment, the sound is going to be reverberating through all the hard surfaces. And this leads to sort of a muddy quality in the sound. Vocal clarity becomes very low.
Sure.
And so my brain is taking all that sound, attempting to interpret it and separate it out into individual audio streams, but it can't. It's just too much, right?
Okay.
So for a comfortable interior space, what we want to do is lower the reverberation in the room so that when you have a large volume of sound, if you're holding that party, maybe it's Thanksgiving, it's still going to be easy to talk to the person next to you and the person across the table.
That's amazing. And I think people don't always consider that when they're thinking about their own home, because you think, oh, that might be important in a ballroom or a commercial space, an office where people are trying to work, but not necessarily your home.
Yeah.
I had an experience with this a number of years ago. We had a client with a really cool cabin that they wanted to design by us. And we actually upholstered the bedroom walls in one of the spaces in a wool material. And the acoustics in that room were just like delicious is the only word that I can think of. You went in there and you're like, oh, it was like best dessert you've ever had in your mouth, right? Like that was the sound quality in that room. And I just thought, man, the conversation doesn't come up enough on things like that. I think a lot of times people aren't necessarily planning for that. They just want to know look and feel for the house. Lighting is another one of those. I've noticed in my home, I'll turn on lamplight and start turning off some of the big lights at nighttime. And my kids will walk in and say, oh my gosh, I just love this time of day. It feels so good in our home, right? So what are some of those other layers that you talk about when you're doing lighting and some of the other things in the home?
Yeah. So lighting is something that I've often felt takes architecture from good to great, right? So I'm going to design something, and in my design software, everything kind of looks the same, right? There's not a lighting on the things that I see, but I have enough experience to understand that when the lighting designer comes in, because it's usually another designer we've hired. We can get our electrical engineer to do it, but they have less experience with it. So I like to have a dedicated lighting designer. And a good one is going to layer lighting.
Yep,
right?
absolutely.
So a production home builder might just like put can lights everywhere and they're sort of flooding every every room with light, which is acceptable perhaps, but it's not the best possible outcome.
Sure.
And LEDs have given us a lot of design opportunities that we never used to have before. We can put LED strips in various places to accent certain things, but we also need to be careful not to be overwhelming.
Yeah,
with
absolutely.
It. Too many accents is also bad.
Right. I think when everything is special, then nothing is special.
Exactly.
Right. So keeping those characters important and dedicated. Okay, so we have just a couple of minutes left, but one of the other favorite things that I want to chat with you about is we were talking a little bit earlier about how you have some other architects in the field that you spend time and rub shoulders with. Talk to us about that and what that looks like, right? I think people can say, gosh, in an industry like yours, it's so competitive, it's so cutthroat. Talk to us a little bit about what that looks like for you.
Yeah. Some architects are more open to the concept of working together in a friendly, competitive way than others. So last night I attended an event with CRAN. It's Custom Residential Architects Network through the American Institute of Architects. And so it's a bunch of local architects coming together, just chatting, talking about things that affect the whole industry. An important element that we discussed last night is I serve on the AIA Utah Housing Affordability Task Force
Okay.
with a couple of other heads of different firms in the local area. So we're working together to try and find ways and strategies of bringing down the cost of housing across the state. And we're always looking for new ideas on that front. So that was a really fun conversation to have with all these practitioners who have run into different things working with different cities. And some of them have sort of bad stories to share.
So sure. That's true.
Of projects where they felt like it was a really good project, but it got scuttled
Sure.
in design review.
Yeah.
So we're looking for ways to make that easier so we can streamline costs. And that's obviously a very different segment of the market than the luxury design that we're talking about.
Yeah. I think, though, when we're talking about the overall affordability of homes, it really does impact whether they're able to have the home that they're hoping for or not, right? If the house that I want to build, just by the nature of the cost of the home, is already 10, 20, 30% more, I don't really have the luxury of being able to do some of those important things like put in the time and energy for architecture and interior design. Like maybe I just have to buy a preset plan and it's going to be a nice house, but it won't necessarily be my house. It won't feel so special.
Right.
I mean, again, it will be a great house, but being able to have it be a little bit better aligned with what the true cost should be and being able to rein all of those things in, it gives you the ability to not only have a great house, but something that feels iconic and just like you. So and it allows us to be able to do all the cool things that we want to do too, right? We don't have to value engineer or pull all those details away from the house just because it's simply more expensive.
Yeah. Size is a huge question in that kind of thing. And size also has a huge impact on how you feel in your home.
Absolutely.
I've walked a number of homes this year that had spaces that felt like grand ballrooms and they look fantastic. But I can imagine being there trying to cook dinner and someone's trying to watch TV and the ceiling is 30 feet high in this room that is 70 feet long. The sound is echoing everywhere.
Sure.
And I consider that bad design.
Sure. Yeah, I think it's, we'll hear critique sometimes from people in the industry who are saying, I mean, it's a great house, but who would actually live here? So I think that's one of your responsibilities. It's one of my responsibilities to rein people in and not just do what's being done and say, here's the authentic experience I want to have in my home. Maybe bigger isn't always better. And actually, probably that's the case. Let's do something that's really thoughtful. I think for me, I'd rather have a home that's exactly the right size or even a little small if I could have a higher level of finishes and a higher level of quality in the home altogether than something that's big and empty.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. I had a client about a year ago. They were discussing a home. They wanted it to be 10,000 square feet, but they did not have enough money to fit out 10,000 square feet at the level they were hoping for.
Sure.
And so these conversations are really important to have at the front end, again, in that pre-design diagnosis process that I talk about.
Sure.
That's one of the things that we're going to discuss is what is the budget? What are you hoping to achieve? And we can talk about immediately, is your budget going to be sufficient to accomplish that goal? And I'm not a cost estimator.
Sure.
That is one of the professionals I bring into every project that I do. But I have seen enough projects to sort of have a at least gut reaction.
Yeah, which I so appreciate in my industry once the plans get handed over to us, because I think the clients have this certain level of finish and expectation, and even the furniture package that goes into a home, they have this ideal in their mind of how they want the end product to be. And it's one of the most challenging or devastating things for me to get to the end of the project and say, I know you had this grand vision, but just because simply the size of the space and the amount of budget that's already been allotted to other things, we don't end up being able to do 40% of the things that you want, which I think is really hard, which simply if we would have adjusted the sizing or the spacing of this handful of things, everything could have been everything you wanted and more. So I really appreciate that from your point of view, because preliminarily you're setting them up for success where we're not having to tell them bad news all throughout the project. So I love that you think about that. That's really important to us. I know it's really important to the clients. And it sounds like your whole process is really, really thoughtful all the way through.
Yeah.
So thank you so much for joining us. We're going to end on that note because I think that's what everybody's looking for when they're picking an architect, when they're trying to get their home designed, having it be really thoughtful all the way through. It's something that we believe deeply in. And I know for a fact that it makes it the perfect environment for your clients. And that's all we have for you, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. Thank you, Kory, for being here today at Oxford Architects. I'm Stacey Graves with Edit Design House. We're so happy to have you. Please join us next time on 73 Degrees. Please subscribe, like below, share with your friends and family, especially if you know somebody who is building or if you're planning on building soon. We would love to be part of it. I know Kory would as well, helping you get your dream home. So thanks so much and have a good one.